All right, folks, welcome. Glad you could make it here today. This hopefully will be a little bit different than some of the trainings. Number one, it's because we're talking about Zoom on Zoom, which is very meta, and I get that. So it's a little weird to talk about the platform on the platform, but also I'm going to try my very best to make this interesting and make it be some things that you can take with you and use without boring you with a whole bunch of stuff that you don't want to see. Scheduled 3 to 3:45. I know how valuable your time is. We will try to cover everything we can in that time or less. So that way we can make sure you can get onto any other stuff you have going on. You'll notice though, especially if you're super familiar with Zoom, at the very bottom here, it says microphones will start on mute. And if you're confused by that at all, thinking, wait, I don't even see where I can turn my microphone on, it's because we're in a webinar right now. And in a webinar, you do not have a microphone. So why would I put this up here? Well, this is step one of Zoom best practices. Best practice 101, first thing to do is when your students come to your session, start off with something on the screen. Even if it's not you, whether you're there or not, get something up on the screen for your students to see so that they, number one, know that something is actually happening, but making it something meaningful. Make it a welcome to the session, make it a welcome to class. Think back to the days of being in elementary school when the teacher would have written up on the chalkboard the things you were going to do that day along with a good morning class message. Think of this as the same thing. This is your opportunity to, number one, make sure your students know that they are in the right place. That's what you got from the first line. You saw that and went, oh good, I am in the Zoom best practices. You know who you're looking at. You know what time it's going to get started and any important information. These are great things to include. Just make a standard template, include it for your students so that whenever they come in, they know what is going on. Set the expectations as well. I don't have a lot of high expectations for this or things that I need to cover. It doesn't bother me if you eat while we are going through this session because, well, I can't see you or hear you. So if you're enjoying a nice Chick-fil-A sandwich right now, go ahead and enjoy. That being said, if you're going to have students participating on camera, this would be a great time to set those expectations. Are you going to allow your students to eat during your class? Are you going to ask that students spit their gum out before talking? Do you care if they are in a outside location or an indoor location? There might be some things, if you're teaching a class on, I don't know, geology, you might say for this session, you have to be outside because there are things that I want you to look at. Put those things up in the very front screen so that if there has to be corrective action, students can take that corrective action at the very beginning, not once you've already gotten started. So give your students something to look at from the very beginning whenever you get going. Slide 2. Good news. This is not a PowerPoint presentation. I am not going to bore you with a whole bunch of PowerPoint slides. This is actually, as you can, I don't know if you see this on your screen or not, this is slide 2 of 2. This is as far as we are going with slides. From here on, we are going to actually try to get into the meat of using Zoom, looking at how to use Zoom while on Zoom. At this point, I'm going to assume every single one of you has been on a whole bunch of Zoom calls. At very least, you've all been on this one. Hopefully you were all on the one this morning as well, getting to see President Turner. But maybe there's more to Zoom than you've been able to experience so far. Maybe there's features that you're looking for that you haven't been able to find, or maybe you just want to know, is there something I'm missing? Could I be doing something better? Is there a better way to handle things than what I have been doing? And I'd like to go over some of those things just so we can kind of know what really are the best practices. What are the things that we can say are definitely things that we should or shouldn't do? So I'm going to actually switch from sharing. And in case you're wondering, if you've never seen a setup quite like what I have going on right here with all of this weird white space around me and a PowerPoint as my background, this is actually a fairly new feature that you can set a PowerPoint presentation as your background and then move through the slides as you're going. It automatically dropped me down here into this little corner. You can kind of see as I move my hands, the edge of my little box. it dropped me down here and gives you a nice amount of space around you so that for a virtual background, you can actually have a PowerPoint presentation. Now, you might need to rethink how your PowerPoint presentation is laid out so that you've got room for yourself, but just letting you know that is one of the newer features to Zoom and is pretty useful. But I'm going to switch my sharing. I'm not going to be sharing like this anymore. I'm going to switch to sharing my browser because we're going to go to the browser side of Zoom to start looking at things. And when you share your browser, this is another one of the first tips for success. When you share your browser, always think about, what am I sharing with my students? Now, as you can see, the last thing I was looking for was how to find a better job. Maybe leaving something like that up there is not a good idea. So I probably should have thought about that before I shared. So let's close that out so that nobody sees that I was looking for that. Look at that. All this stuff we've been looking in here for how to get Zoom best practices for teachers and students. Boy, this ought to be good. We're going to go into smu.zoom.us/meeting. I've already signed in, so I didn't have to go through all the SSO stuff, but as you will see right in here, you've probably been here before, at least at some point. Might have forgotten how to get here because there's a good chance at this point that you're just always using the Zoom client to get to your meetings and start your meetings. If you've forgotten how to get here, it's just smu.zoom.us/meeting. I'm going to go ahead and grab that link and put it in the chat. All right. In here, I can see the classes that I have upcoming. Looks like I actually have a class scheduled for Saturday at 4 p.m. I don't. That's just a demo class. That's actually for the class that I'm teaching after this one. You can see the stuff that I have coming up, previous meetings, information about my personal meeting room, and you can even create meeting templates. But this is where you're going to start off with. You're going to start off with your upcoming meetings and the ability to schedule a new meeting. Let's just talk about scheduling a meeting from the very beginning. You can actually click that blue button on the front, or at any time, no matter what screen you're on, you can actually click the schedule meeting button. It's always right there. Great ideas to give your meeting a meaningful name. Now, if you're teaching a class, do you want to have the subject of the meeting be the name of the class? Do you want to be what that particular discussion is going to be about? Do you want to have the date of the class included in it? Hard to say. That's kind of up to your style and how you choose to present these and how you choose to share these. But whenever you're scheduling them, give them a meaningful name. I know if I'm going to be teaching a class, let's say Friday, I'm going to teach a class about how to share a Zoom meeting on YouTube. I would call it sharing Zoom recordings on YouTube. Friday, 3 p.m. Now, putting Friday at 3 p.m. in the topic does not do anything to actually set the time. I just find it useful to add a little bit of that information because it helps me later know exactly what I'm looking at. Maybe I'm going to teach that session more than once. Who knows? In here, I can put a description if I want. I can use a template. I haven't created a template for this type of meeting, so I'm not going to. When is it going to be? Well, it's going to be Friday at 3 p.m. It's going to last 1 hour Central Time. Not going to be a recurring meeting, just one time. These are all pretty standard things that you've seen before. You can generate a meeting ID, or you can use your personal meeting ID. There's some people who feel like one is definitely the way to go. Other folks who feel like the other is definitely the way to go. Again, I would just say consistency is a good thing on here. If you are going to be working with folks that expect to be able to use your personal meeting ID to get into your meeting, then use your personal meeting ID. Otherwise, letting it generate it automatically is a great way to do it as well. Now, when it comes to security, this is one of the Zoom updates that's happened over the summer that you may have missed out on. You are now required to have either a passcode or a waiting room. What this does is it enables you to keep bad actors out of your room. Passcode can be set by you. You can make it be whatever you want it to be, or you can just have a waiting room where you have to let everyone in. Now, the difficulty obviously with the waiting room is you have to monitor it. And if you have students that are going to be showing up late, it can be a little bit tricky as far as making sure that they actually get in. Now, some of you caught on to what I just said and thought, hey, I kind of like that. There is also the ability to manage students coming in late. It's an easy way if you're going to say you must be here within the first 5 minutes. It's a way to be able to say, I'm not letting you in if you're not in after the first 5 minutes. Now, communicate that ahead of time before you just jump into it, and maybe give a little grace for at least your first few meetings, but it is a way to control who's coming into your meeting. I never recommend having host or participant videos turned on by default. I think everyone should be able to choose when their video starts. Now, can you have a requirement that your students have to have their video on for your class? Sure, but let them decide whenever they're going to turn it on. Who knows, there might be a speck of lunch left in their teeth that they'd like to get out before their video automatically pops on. Audio, no reason to disable telephone or computer, to enable only computer or telephone audio. Let them both work. I realize it's inconvenient sometimes to have students who call in via phone because you can't always tell who they are and you don't get to see their faces. But forcing it to be computer audio is going to do nothing other than putting up barriers to students being a part of your class. The rest of these, enable join before host. I would leave that by default. There's nothing that they can really mess up by being in the room before you're there. Keep them muted upon entry. Automatically record your meetings in the cloud. Now, there's a whole process for this, and I'm not going to go all the way through this today because I could spend an entire session on this, but there is a new process for recording your Zoom sessions straight to Panopto. If you'd like more information on this, reach out to your friendly ATSD. There is some documentation up on the SMU OIT website as well. I've tested it, it works great. So set it to record in the cloud, have it go into Panopto. It will get automatically deleted from the Zoom cloud storage, but it will stay in your Panopto and be easily shareable from there. Alt hosts, if you're teaching with someone else, great idea to make them an alternative host so that they can also help you out in case, well, something goes wrong with your technology. Those are all the basic settings. There's nothing too crazy there. There's nothing really big that has to be messed with. I promise we're not going to spend the whole time looking at settings, but these are just some important things to get right from the beginning. The other place I'm going to look is actually on the left-hand side under settings. Now, right in here, you can set up some settings. These are not settings for that one meeting that's coming up. These are settings for your profile. These are things that you kind of always want to be done this one specific way. Do you want to have a waiting room that is just turned on by default? You can turn that on here. Do you want to require a passcode when scheduling new meetings? You can turn that on or off here. Passcode for instant meetings. All these sort of security settings up at the top. What should the default behavior be for the host video, for the participant videos? Again, these are just the things that are setting, those same settings that we saw before when we were scheduling a meeting. These are the things that allow you to not have to change those each time if you find yourself changing them each time. So again, all through here, we're looking at basically those settings that we saw before. These are just a long term. You can turn chat off. You can also turn private chat off. There are very few instances where I would want to have chat turned off. I think chat is a pretty good tool. It's a nice way to be able to communicate with people, especially for you to be able to communicate with your students, any sort of link that you need them to be able to get to. I've seen far too many people do Zoom presentations where they show links up on their screen that are 50 characters long, and they expect folks to somehow be able to get to them. Students can't get to those links. It's okay to show an example of the link, but throw it into the chat box so that folks can get to it. I have file transfer turned on. This is one that I have actually, go back up. I have auto saving chats turned on. I always want to save the chats because I never know what might be said that I need to remember later. I highly recommend turning on auto saving chats so that you don't have to worry about saving the chat in your meeting. I've also modified that I turned file transfer on. I like for folks to be able to transfer files in the in-meeting chat. But whenever I'm meeting with folks, the only thing that I want to have turned on is PDFs. I'm a big fan of PDFs. If this is kind of getting away from our Zoom best practices, But just sort of a personal advice thing, if you're having students turn stuff in, if it is a document that you need to be able to read, have them turn in a PDF. Even if you have them turn in multiple formats, have them turn in your preferred format and a PDF. It's a great way to get around that old, sorry, I turned it in, I don't know what happened to the file. You should be able to read it. I like people being able to share PDFs. You can turn on or off polls. You can turn on or off co-hosts. I also have these two goofy ones down here where I show the meeting control toolbar whenever I'm in a meeting, and I show the Zoom windows when I'm sharing my screen. Only reason you'd ever want to turn these on is if you're teaching about Zoom and you want people to be able to see your Zoom control panel. That being said, I like to mention it because in case you were ever wondering, when I share my screen, are they seeing all my Zoom stuff? They are not unless you have turned it on. They don't actually see the Zoom windows. They see everything else. The sharing ignores the Zoom windows. There's a whole bunch more things in here that you can turn on or off, like whiteboard, which is really cool. You can turn on or off nonverbal feedback. This is a really nice one to turn on whenever you want people to be able to give you those single nonverbal, click on the button to give you a feedback back. All kinds of things you can look at in here. Check it out, read through each one. I'm not gonna go through each one of the settings in here because we could spend, 2 hours looking at everything in here and seeing all the options that are in here. But sometime when you have nothing better to do, go through, take a look at those options and make sure everything is set up to your preference. The good news about these meeting settings that you click on from the settings, these are the settings that those of you who remember Ron Popeil, he had the pocket fisherman and he had the little cooker thing, and he always said, set it and forget it, right? And that's what you can do here. Set it and forget it. Once it's done here, you don't have to worry about changing it every time. This is a one-time and done thing. In the recording tab, this is where you can set the settings that have to do with how you are recording, what is being recorded, whether it is recorded automatically, etc. It's far fewer options to look at and less likely that you will need to really change a whole lot in here. Okay, that's the boring stuff. That's all the stuff inside of Zoom that you have to try to figure out, okay, how am I supposed to share that? What am I supposed to have in the settings? It's sometimes hard to know the best thing to do until you've actually had a meeting or two and then you go, gee, I wish I could have changed that. Good news is go back into the settings. You probably could change it. There probably was a way. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, and I see we've got a question in the Q&A box. Now, before I answer the actual question in the Q&A box, if any of you have not been in a webinar before, which I'm guessing most of you have probably been in at least some webinars, but if you've been in a webinar before or not, and you're noticing this Q&A box and thinking, gee, I've never seen these Q&A boxes whenever I'm having my meetings with my students. I wish I could have that. Well, the Q&A box is just for webinars. It is a replacement for chat because what it allows is for you to ask questions to me and for me to see those questions without there being a whole chat that is open. So the question that I have in the Q&A box is, can you have music play? So you can have music play. It is possible to play music through a Zoom session. Now, it doesn't happen automatically, and there are some considerations. The first thing that you'll want to look at, whenever you're looking at Zoom, it's difficult because we think of Zoom in 3 ways, basically. We think of whenever you click the Zoom icon on your desktop, this application loads up and you go, okay, this is Zoom. And then you start a meeting and you now have this primarily black window with a bunch of little tiny faces that we call like the Brady Bunch mode, right? Well, and now that feels like Zoom. I don't know where that white window went that had the blue and the orange buttons that said start a meeting or schedule a meeting. I guess that Zoom turned into this Zoom. But then we also have that window where I just was, which is the online portal of Zoom. So like I said, there's kind of 3 ways to look at Zoom. Right now, I'm really just talking about, we'll call it the Brady Bunch view. That's what we're in right now. That's what I am seeing is a 3-person Brady Bunch. In the 3-person Brady Bunch, down at the bottom, down that way, I've got a mute and a video button. That's the button that you're probably familiar with from a standard meeting. You won't have it right now because you're in a webinar. But in a standard meeting, you've got your mute and your video button. You're familiar with those. You've seen them. Right next to them, they have little menu pop-ups. They're like the caret symbol on your keyboard. If you click on those, if you click on the one next to the mute, you'll see all the different options you have for speakers and microphones. And you might be surprised, even a computer that you've never really plugged anything into, it will often have 2 options in there at least. I've got way too many options in there. I don't know why they're all in there, but they're working, so I'm not going to mess with them. From in here, you can click on the very first thing. Now, it's the very bottom option. So I mean first in order of how your mouse gets to it. The very first option you get to is your audio settings. And in your audio settings, you can turn on whether or not you want to share the audio from your computer. So if you want to be able to play music from your computer out to other people, you can go in there and turn on the audio that you are sharing. Also worth noting, under screen share, if you go to, that's sort of the middle button, right about down there, it's the thing that you click to share your screen. Now, I cannot share with you the screen of me trying to share my screen, unfortunately. That's one of those kind of, it becomes a little too self-referential at that point and it gets nervous. But there is an option to share your computer audio from in there. And that's how you can actually just decide that you don't want to share your screen. You don't want to do anything other than share the audio that's playing from your computer. My suggestion, if you're wanting to just share the audio from your computer and keep everything else normal, click on there, share the audio. It is a little weird because you do click the share screen button. The good news is, and I will prove it to you right now, I'm going to click the share screen button right now. You don't see my screen. Don't get nervous about clicking that button. It's okay to go ahead and click that button and not know exactly what you're going to be sharing because it doesn't automatically start sharing. It doesn't start sharing until you tell it what to share. So from there, I have my basic options such as all the files, all the applications that I'm currently running, or the whiteboard, which is really cool. We'll get to that in just a second. Or I can share the advanced, which has the PowerPoint background, the music or computer sound only if you just want to share the sounds from there. Or you can even share content from a second camera, which is pretty cool. If you have more than one webcam set up or a document camera, you can actually share stuff from there. You can even share files from the share screen button. I think maybe it's time to update the name of the share screen button because it shares more than just the screen, but it's all in there. Don't be afraid to click it. It's not going to automatically start sharing your screen and showing your Google searches for how to get a better job. It's okay. It won't overshare. Okay, while we're on the subject of sharing and why I said there are some limitations. Audio is usually okay to share, and video is even usually pretty good. Right now, I'm using a really nice camera, and I've got a really nice internet speed, so my videos should be coming through pretty good. I even have a nice little ring light that I borrowed from my wife that helps me not look quite so gloomy. But video is tricky because right now the video that you are seeing, pixels get redrawn constantly, and those pixels back here where the curtains are, they're not getting redrawn all the time. They're sitting pretty still. The only ones that have to get redrawn all the time are really my mouth has to get redrawn pretty regularly and my eyes whenever I blink. So it's a lot easier to do stuff like this. If you've ever watched a video of fireworks or sparklers or confetti, you know how weird it starts to get. It's because there's too many moving parts at once. The reason I mentioned that and the reason that I go a little tech heavy on that is to say, if you feel like sharing a video with your class, even if you go in and you say optimize for video sharing, sharing a video over Zoom is really tricky. It's really hard. And as good as it looks to you, it's gonna look 10 times worse to the people on the other end. Sharing a video is one of those things that I would only do if you're really desperate to share something with them. My recommendation when people say, what's the best way to share a video over Zoom, is always don't. Don't share a video over Zoom. It's just not the way to do it. We could get into a whole conversation about copyright and the legality of sharing videos over Zoom. That's a whole nother discussion that I'd rather not even get into right now, particularly because at the end of the day, it's just not worth it. Don't share videos over Zoom. If you have a time where you want folks to watch a video, like if I wanted you to watch a video right now, the best thing I can do is to say, all right, folks, it's 2:35 right now. The video I want you all to watch is 14 minutes. I'm going to put a link to it in the chat. Go watch that video. Let's check back in 16 minutes. That way you have time to get yourself a drink of water. Give them the link, let them watch the video, and have them come back. I know there's that concern of, well, how am I going to make sure that they watch the video? The same way you're making sure that they do their reading. You ask them questions about it. You engage them about it. So you're not going to be able to hold their hand and force them to watch the video. Just give them the video, give them time, and then ask your questions, and you'll be able to get responses from them. But yeah, long story short, audio is usually okay. Video is not. You will sometimes hear folks saying or trying to use the technique of when they're having a bad connection, going in and turning off their camera so that they can at least have audio. Now, this sometimes works, this sometimes doesn't make any difference. It really has to do with where the bad connection is. If I'm having poor connection quality and I can't hear you very well and I ask you to turn off your video because my connection quality is bad, it's probably not going to make a big difference. Now, if my quality is bad, you're having trouble hearing and seeing me, and it's all on my end where the problem is, and you're experiencing that problem, it might help for me to turn off my video so that you can hear me a little bit better. Just know that that's not a guaranteed solution to turn off video so the audio quality goes up. It all depends on where the problem is. Okay, we have a couple other questions in the Q&A. If I have a webcam in addition to an internal camera on my laptop, can I use split screen in my Zoom meeting displayed to my class? Can I use split screen in my Zoom meeting displayed to my class? So the question being, can you have one camera that's facing on you, another camera that's looking somewhere else? Yes. Ooh, Masumi wants to jump in on this one. Maybe.
No, I'll let you.
Okay. Oh, I see it. You just marked the box. I see. No, you're good, Mel. No, thank you. Yeah, so basically, so long as you have multiple cameras set up and you go into that share option and you select that you are going to put content from second camera, then yes, you can display using split screen. Now, it is a little tricky with multiple screens in Zoom. You can just use Zoom with 2 monitors without having to enable 2 monitor setting. But if you're using Zoom and you have 2 monitors and you are feeling like you're missing out on some of the content and it's not working the way you expected, do go into Zoom settings and enable second monitor settings. Sometimes it's what you're looking for, sometimes it's not. So play around with it. Everyone has their own way they like to use Zoom. But check out the 2 monitor, dual monitor setup settings in Zoom, turn that on, and then yes, you shouldn't have any issue with doing a split screen.
Do you mind if I step in?
Go ahead.
Just, most of the time, whenever a dual monitor is chosen, it won't necessarily start in the Zoom session that you have open. You actually have to leave Zoom and come back into it for that dual monitor preference to get activated.
That's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up, Lindsay. Yeah, if you turn on dual monitor, you do have to close the session and start a new session for it to be activated. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm reading these questions live, so forgive me. A friend and I shared video with one another yesterday and it worked fine. To answer that, is it because it was just the 2 of us? Yes. It was after 5? Yes. Dumb luck? Yes. You had all 3 working in your favor. The fewer people there are on the session, the more of an off-peak time it is. And I don't know, roll the dice. You sometimes can. Just know that if you are, especially if you are on main campus in a busy building at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday, and you have students both locally and out in the dorms and at their homes and in Florida, and you're all trying to watch this super important clip from Toy Story 4 together, it's just not going to work. So don't use it for times like that. You can get lucky every once in a while. I wouldn't gamble it on a class session. Might Zoom ever enable monitoring multiple breakout rooms concurrently? Boy, I sure hope so. If you are ever, this is such a great question. If you are ever asked to provide any feedback to Zoom, or you're somebody who uses Twitter, or you like to be, you're one of those people that likes to write letters to people, man, such a great question that I really think there have been enough people that have been begging for that hopefully there will be some sort of update made. But at the current time, breakout rooms are tough. Breakout rooms exist. Breakout rooms are a nice way to be able to sort of have everybody go their separate ways for a quick discussion. The problem is it's hard to be, if you imagine, sending your students off into their corners to talk, it's hard to have that feeling of being a teacher walking from corner to corner, or even that feeling of being a teacher standing in the middle of the room, knowing which corner you need to walk to in order to engage the right students. That experience just isn't really there right now. I'd have to hope and think that that should be a feature that is coming soon, because so many people are so hungry for it and demanding it.
You mind if I
Go
step
ahead.
in? One of the ways that a lot of the instructors that I support have gotten around this is they leave themselves in the main room and instruct their students that if they have a question, to exit their breakout room, come back to the main room, ask their question, and then go back to their breakout room.
That's great. What if I only have one monitor? If you only have one monitor, Zoom can still be pretty good. You can still have a pretty good experience with it. I would never say you have to have 2 monitors for Zoom. I only have one monitor. Now, my monitor is 52 inches wide. So, but believe it or not, that actually opens up for a whole new set of problems. Just full disclosure before you decide to go out there and get an extremely wide monitor, if you think that's the thing that you need, sometimes just having 2 monitors is better than having one really wide monitor. So there's a whole different set of problems there, but with just one monitor, you still can have all kinds of content up there. You still can do multiple cameras. You still can display plenty of content, and it's actually shouldn't be a problem. I was thinking about having all 8 of my grad students. Oh, let's go, that is most recent. I was thinking about having all 8 of my grad students in Zoom, even though 6 are in the room, so that we can connect with each other. 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. class, good or bad idea? Great idea. I am a big fan of local Zoom students, especially when it comes to audio issues, especially when it comes to student interactivity. Yes, get your students that are in the room on Zoom as well, even if it's just to be able to chat with the other students, even if it's just to be able to see each other's faces. We do have lots and lots of rooms on campus that are set up to be able to see the classroom visually and hear the classroom auditorily. But yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of even getting the students in the room on Zoom. Don't worry too much about bandwidth at that point. University network can handle it. That's totally fine. Zoom can definitely handle it. That's totally fine. But yes, having local students on Zoom in order to get everyone on the same page is a great idea. All those caveats about sharing video don't apply to sharing audio. No, just know that your audio quality when you share your audio from your computer are not going to be as good. Now, if I share my direct computer audio, it's pretty good. It's it's about the loss level that you would expect from a CD quality audio to FM radio quality audio. It's not a huge loss. Now, if I have a speaker playing in the background that's playing some music, those usually actually come off pretty bad, especially the more Zoom updates, the more it tries to get rid of background noise, and the more it's going to try to muffle that background audio. Also, I taught for 4 years, and I learned the very hard way, my students don't like my music, so they might not like yours either. Visiting breakout rooms, yeah, you can drop into breakout rooms. It does work. It's hard. It's hard to feel. It works. It just doesn't feel the way we want it to feel as instructors. It doesn't feel like walking from table to table. It doesn't feel like cracking the door open and listening in on a conversation. It always feels like you've kind of stepped in front of a conversation. I really do hope that is something that improves too. SMU Flex. The classroom has a second monitor and I can see the session on both monitors. The participants show up on the second monitor. However, I cannot see the participants when I run a PowerPoint show. Is there a way for me to still see the online participants on the second monitor while presenting using PowerPoint? So number one, I would say might be worth checking out the new PowerPoint background option that I started off with. I really like it. As soon as I discovered it was an option, I was like, man, this is great. I'm redesigning every PowerPoint I ever used to have room for me in the corner. That being said, if you don't want to do that or don't have the time for that or can't do that, yes, there is. Without knowing the exact setup of how the computers are, which is going to be the primary monitor, which is the second monitor, is the screen mirroring first or is it mirroring second? That would be hard to give a specific answer to that exactly, because I don't know if they're all set up exactly the same. I would get with, and this is my question, my answer to Carlos, I would get with your ATSD for whatever school you're in about that specific question in that specific room. Just to note, but the short answer is yes, that is totally possible. It just kind of takes a little bit of knowing, you know, specifically how things were set up, because it can be a little different depending on, I mean, are we doing HDMI to HDMI? Are we doing first, second mirrored? It's hard to know for sure how it's set up without being right there in that room. But talk to your ATSD. They could definitely walk you through that. Split screen with one monitor. Hard to do a true split screen with a single monitor. That being said, so long as you're running Windows or you have the right stuff set up on a Mac, you can take your Windows, click them at the very top, drag them over, grab that bar at the top, drag it over to the side and let go of it, and it'll actually snap to the half, and you can have two applications sitting up at the same time. That's if you want to run two separate applications. If you're wanting to have the true split screen experience, the dual monitor experience in Zoom from one monitor won't really work. But just pulling that top bar and snapping them to the sides will make them take up exactly half the screen. That's one good way to do it. And if you have any sort of modern monitor, which is widescreen, it actually still looks pretty decent. There's still a decent amount of real estate for the applications. Would you advise bringing a laptop into the HyFlex classroom for a second monitor? Yes, always. Always have a second piece of technology available, just in case. I have 4 laptops under my desk right now, so always have more backups. I recently found out that you can have up to 49 students show on screen. Will their images be really small? Yes, but not to the point of where you would ever go, you know, who are these people? If you have a reasonable size screen, anything larger than a 17-inch screen, which is, you know, a full-size laptop or any size, or any desktop size screen, you won't have any problem seeing the students and knowing who they are. And it's a great way to have that 49 up to check for student engagement, see which students are actively participating, see which students are actively, you know, a part of what's going on. Since synchronous sessions must be recorded, are there FERPA requirements involved for inviting non-students to participate in my classes? For many years, I've welcomed ESL volunteers, mostly undergrads, and sometimes faculty staff to assist and interact with students during class. I am not the best person to answer this. I would get with CTE on this. CTE could do a far better job answering that question than I could. I would say this, just from the base level knowledge that I have, that for the most part, FERPA doesn't really apply to video of your classroom because the classroom is considered more or less a public space. It is more or less a public forum. So, you know, you want to do people the decency of letting them know that we are recording this session. But it's a public space. Now, I know we're a private university and I know it is your class and not every person off the street is just welcome to come in, but when it comes to privacy laws, it's a public space. I have not been using a headset. No one has complained about the audio. What is the benefit of a headset? I have 3 kids and 2 dogs. That's the #1 benefit of a headset, is I can hear you and hopefully you don't hear too much of them. Headset gets the microphone closer to your mouth, so it's able to focus on the sound that is coming out of here, not all the sounds that are coming out of over there. Also helps me focus in a little bit better on what I'm hearing. If you're in a quiet setting and you don't have a lot of background noise and you're hearing people fine and they're hearing you fine, great. The audio quality pickup on most modern webcams is really good. It's really for if you're trying to prevent, like right now, you probably can't hear my daughter playing guitar 2 rooms over because I'm using a headset. I think that's it for the questions. Okay, it looks like we've got a message about FERPA and Zoom recordings in here. I have not read through this. I can take that offline because it'll take me some time to sort through this. I would just say I'm not the person to ask. So I'm happy to help take a look at it, but I'm definitely not a subject matter expert when it comes to FERPA compliance. Okay, I said that I would try to have us done by 3:45. It's 3:43. If you would like to go, by all means, thank you so much for coming. Hopefully there's been some useful discussion here and just some good places to get started. I'm going to do a 30-second overview. Number 1, have something up on the screen when people come into your room. Number 2, whenever you switch to your browser to Google something, make sure the last thing you were Googling is something you're willing for your students to see that you were Googling. Number 3, smu.zoom.us/meeting is where you go in to set all of your settings. There's 2 parts. There's the settings for an individual meeting, and there's the settings that you can set once and then forget about and not have to worry about again. And finally, back in Zoom, that thing where we're at right now, that's where you can go in and you can put in virtual backgrounds. You can do the virtual PowerPoint background. You can change how much your camera makes you look more beautiful. You can do all kinds of things in here. With that, I'm going to keep for just a few more minutes because I do have another session at 4, but I'm happy to do a few more Q&As. But if you need to get going, thank you so much for coming. Have a great semester. Janice, your question. I don't have a second screen or headset. Is this going to make SMU Flex difficult? No, SMU Flex will be difficult enough on its own. I would say that's hard to say. I don't think that I would call either one of them a requirement or even not a requirement, not a must-have, maybe not even a should-have. That really depends on your setup. If you are someone who has traditionally worked on a single monitor and you're used to that workflow, that's great. You don't necessarily have to get another one. If like was mentioned before, if you're not getting any complaints about audio, keep going with what you got. You don't necessarily have to have another one. Now, I will say if you're interested in getting a second monitor, they are available right now. I don't know, Headsets are a little harder to come by sometimes. There's been some difficulty with some technology, but there are monitors out there. There are really good monitors at Walmart, Target, Sam's, Costco for $100. You do not need to get a premium monitor. The even $80 monitor at Walmart is better than the $200 monitor from 5 years ago. So just get yourself a second one if you really want. It's not a major investment at this point like it used to be. That was great. Can you show us how to do the PowerPoint background? I can't exactly show you because I can't really share that part, I don't think. But the PowerPoint background, if you go under choose virtual background, that's the little caret next to the video setting. In there, oh, no. I said the wrong thing. It's not under sharing. It's under screen share. Under screen share, that's right in the middle. Hit that little button and then under advanced. If you don't see the option to do it, it's because you need to update Zoom. And if you haven't updated Zoom lately, or you don't know when you updated Zoom, as soon as this is over, update Zoom. There's been a lot of features added, especially security features. You need to keep your Zoom updated. But yeah, PowerPoint is going to be under the screen share. It helped me for the students to always come up on the screen in the same order. Any way to do that? No. And I should mention this, the order that the people are on the screen is just, it's chaos. It's never the same. There's no way to change it. Also, it's not the same for everyone. People always feel really funny, especially like at the Board of Trustees meetings. I'm on the background helping run Board of Trustees meetings. And I'm not allowed to talk about what's said there, but I can tell you this part. People are always nervous because they go, why am I number 2 in the meeting? I shouldn't be there. I shouldn't be the one next to Turner. It's like, it's okay. You're the only one that sees it that way. Nobody else sees you right next to there. Everybody hates being number 2 on there, but everyone is. Everyone else is number 2 when they're not talking. So it's okay. There is unfortunately no way to do it. That would sure be nice. I would love if there was a classroom set up where you could assign seats to people, and whenever they came in, they could just have their seat. That's another one of those. Write your congressman. Hopefully we can get that added in. Didn't realize that SMU Zoom needed to be updated by individual users. In order to update Zoom, you do not have to go to the Zoom website. You can actually, when you click on Zoom from the desktop, you get that first screen that says something like start a meeting, schedule a meeting. Click the little gear icon and there's a place to update from in there. Just run the update. It'll actually, if it gets far enough out of date, it'll prompt you to update. But my advice, don't wait for it to prompt you. Go ahead and check for updates. I don't know, at least before every semester. I probably update mine, or at least check for updates once a week or so, but I'm on Zoom constantly and I need to always have the most up-to-date features. So I don't know, between every semester at least, check for an update on the Windows Zoom application. All right, with that, I need to get ready for my next session. Thank you folks so much for coming. I see one more. Will the Classroom Zoom apps be up to date? Yes. Yes, Classroom's Zoom will be kept up to date by OIT. All right, with that, I'm gonna close the Q&A. So if anybody asks anything else, I won't see it because I've got another session. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for coming, folks.